It never fails. A few weeks ago, I sat down, computer was fully charged, coffee cup was full, I cracked my knuckles, I wrote at the top of a blank document, High Holiday Sermon 5783, and my phone rang. A FaceTime call from my niece, who is 7. She recently has gotten into the habit of not just staring at me while I try to coax out, "Hi, how are you?" She's moved on to just opening with a line that I find funny or challenging or sometimes completely unexpected. And this call was no different. I opened up the call and I said, I hit receive on the call. And before I could say, "Hi, Molly," she said, "Are you ready for the high holidays?" Well, this is what I do for work. So of course I was like, of course I am. Absolutely. I'm ready for all of the holidays, I said. I'm ready for Rosh Hashanah. I'm ready for Yom Kippur. I'm ready for Sukkot. I'm ready for Simchat Torah. And she had this look on her face like, what do you mean all of those holidays for the high holiday season? And I said, it's a season. It's not just one day. It's not just one holiday. It's not even just 2 holidays. Well, why are there so many of them? Why does it take so long? Good question, I asked myself, but out loud I said, well, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot for us to do. There's a lot for us to prepare for. There is a lot for us to commit to. And I think that if any of our teachers in the congregation had been on that call, they would have recognized when we started, me and Molly, talking about working backwards from the goal of the year, the goal of this holiday season, to live a life of goodness and of kindness and of righteousness in 5783. And knowing that that was our end goal, to work our way backwards and to see what each of the components means and why are they in each necessary. The dates and the times of the fall holidays are, for the most part, commanded directly by God in the Torah, as well as some of the foundational practices that we fulfill on them. For the most part, they're found in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23. In there, we read that on the first day of the 7th month of Tishrei, that's today, the first day, we are to observe Rosh Hashanah as, quote, Shabbaton Zichron Teruah Mikra Kodesh, a day of complete rest, a sacred occasion on which to hear the blasts of the shofar. On its heels, Torah tells us we're to mark the 10th day of the same month as a day of atonement, Yom Kippur, another sacred occasion, this one for practicing self-denial by abstaining from food, from drinks, from various luxuries. 5 days later, Torah tells us we're commanded to observe a Feast of Booths, Sukkot, for a period of 7 days, the first of which is yet another Shabbaton, when no work is to be done. And rounding out the high holiday season is, of course, Simchat Torah, the day on which we complete our annual reading of the scroll and return again to its beginning. It's worth mentioning, I think, that while not explicitly commanded as a holiday observance by God, the rabbis of the Talmud drew out our observance of Simchat Torah, as we know it now, from the tradition that was mentioned, Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day after the start of Sukkot. There it is for us, the arc of our holiday season, touching our lives in various ways and shining light on an array of emotions, reflections, experiences, observations about ourselves and about the world that we inhabit. Each holiday on its own is rich with meaning, of course. But over the course of this past year, starting in Rosh Hashanah 5782, I have not been able to help thinking that when viewing them together through a sort of backwards design lens, a deeper appreciation for what each of them and all of them together represent and what they offer us individually and communally as it begins to emerge. Let's start at the end and work backwards. Take Simchat Torah, when we complete the recitation of our Torah scroll and then in the same breath begin again Bereshit, Genesis. Those who have ever celebrated Simchat Torah know that it is not a spectator sport. It is full energy, full body experience that can quite literally leave you breathless and exhausted, at least if you do it right. The weight of the Torah physically is felt in our arms as we parade it around, and even in our hands and our fingertips when we unroll the entire scroll entirely with the help of everyone present. We stand shoulder to shoulder and form a circle with the unfurled scroll, and we're presented with a tangible, a visual reminder of what this season has been all about up to that moment, about completing cycles of growth, about re-emerging, about returning to something familiar which can guide us in our daily comings and goings. But before that, of course, is Sukkot, another of our physical holidays, if you will, as opposed to the ones that exist more in our heads and in our hearts. When we construct temporary structures on Sukkot out of fallen, impermanent materials, and then we step inside of them, we dwell in them. We're commanded to eat, to drink, to visit with friends and loved ones, even to sleep inside these impermanent structures. With objects and items that the rest of the world may assume to have no more value in their old age, we are commanded to create havens of happiness and love, sustenance and kindness, one last hurrah for each and every piece that goes into our sukkah, knowing that they, like all physical things which we do come to love, will one day be gone, and that the memory of each year's sukkah will be all that's left. Sukkot is the time when we contemplate and celebrate all that is physical, all that is liminal, all that is fragile and fleeting, but remembering always that the cycles of birth, death, and renewal are sacred and always around us. Before Sukkot, of course, Yom Kippur, everyone's favorite. A day with which most Jews, with Jews and probably most non-Jews are also familiar because of the depths of emotion and self-challenge that we plumb as we fulfill it. The actions we take on Yom Kippur don't involve much building or lifting or carrying or schaching like the two holidays which follow it, yet it is still nonetheless physically challenging in unsurprising ways. After all, how often do probably many of us in this room, in the day-to-day of our busy lives, without even really thinking about it, go for almost an entire day without eating something substantive or taking a drink of water? And yet, on Yom Kippur, such an act of conscious self-denial becomes much harder than ever because of the emotional and the spiritual demands that we are to meet, coupled with that hunger and that thirst. And so we do it to the best of our abilities without causing harm or illness on Yom Kippur, because we understand that such actions are a recognition of our own mortality. Yom Kippur serves as the day when we confront the knowledge that our lives may come to an end before this year is complete, a vitally important step towards each of us staying aware and keeping focused of what is truly important. That, of course, brings us to today, Rosh Hashanah, and the question of what meaning this day truly holds within the arc of our season of holy days. It would be easy, and it is, to describe and understand Rosh Hashanah simply as a day of joy and celebration, replete with festive songs, delicious foods, and a day off from work for some people. But even without plumbing the depths of our liturgy, one can just tell that there is more to Rosh Hashanah than just that. One can just sense that there is underneath it an essential purpose to this day beyond its outer layer of happiness and well wishes. And I believe that it has to do with what we know as its other sort of official name, Yom Harat Olam, the birthday of the world, as our congregational president Gary alluded to in his remarks last night. This term comes to us from the rabbis of the Talmud who believe that Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Tishrei, coincided with the sixth day of creation. And from there, they perceived it not simply as the day of the world's birth, but rather the day when the world was finally formed, finally conceived, when all of those strands that God had been taking were woven together and pulled tight. A day when all things within the universe took shape. That is where the joy of Rosh Hashanah comes from. But it's critically important to remember what else happened on that penultimate, and some would say perhaps ultimate day of creation. As Rabbi Bowman touched on in her sermon last night, that sixth day was when humanity was created. And even more importantly, that was the day on which God made humanity, each and every one of us, each and every human, the stewards, the keepers, the protectors of the entire world for all time. And so what finally emerges, I believe, is that the essential purpose of Rosh Hashanah, the reason why it is the origin point of this arc of the high holiday season, is to remind us that our joy and celebration of the new year must be coupled with remembering that here in the present, each of us is connected to everything and to everyone who came before us, and that we are responsible for helping to conceive in a way and give form in other ways to everything and everyone who comes after. That this link with all of humanity is timeless, present in every generation. That like so many things, it is as once both a blessing beyond words and a sacred burden which needs attention and our energy. I know that's a lot weightier of a way to think about Rosh Hashanah than we're probably used to. Apples and honey and tashlich and brisket would be enough. Dayenu, we might say. In this world of endlessly tight schedules and ever more responsibilities and hoops to jump through, and miserable news 24 hours a day, and a growing general culture of just ignoring others, the last thing just about any of us want is a bright, focused light shone on our eternal responsibilities of divine origin. But it is our responsibility. It was our ancestors' responsibility. It is ours here and now, and it will be the responsibility of our children and grandchildren and the generations which come after them. We must accept these responsibilities of what this day means in the midst of celebrating the new year, because it must be the start of our holiday arc. Without doing so would mean that we could not truly understand the spiritual depths of Yom Kippur and our own mortality. We could not understand or appreciate the slightly frightening yet gloriously calming appreciation of nature's fragile power on Sukkot, or the physically heavy, tangible experience of celebrating completed cycles on Simchat Torah. Yet again, this is a heavy burden this day. It is one of the pieces that we refer to as the yoke of Torah, the heaviness of the Torah on our shoulders. And with all that happens to us benignly each day, with all of the thousand small moments which just day to day complicate and confuse and enervate us just from the time we wake up to getting the day started until we go to sleep, the very idea of realigning our entire outlook of responsibilities can sometimes simply be a bit of a non-starter. But there is a roadmap available to us, right in front of our eyes, literally. It's in the book that you're holding in your hands. The key to fulfilling the truest essential demands of Rosh Hashanah and the holy days which follow it, and therefore the entire year, is found in the blessing, the reading, the piyut, Unetana Tokef. Unetana Tokef Kedushat Hayom, Ki hu nora vayom, uvo tinaseh malchutecha v'yikon bechesed kisecha. Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion, God. This sacred poem, this piyut, which was sung earlier by Cantor Margolius, is what many consider to be the pinnacle of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy, for it tells of the solemnity of the day and the punishment, the ultimate decree awaiting those who dismiss their responsibilities. Yet it is not a poem about suffering without hope. Its author famously advises us how to avoid such an outcome. Uteshuva, utefila, utsedaka, ma'avirin et roa hagzera. Through teshuva and tefillah and tzedakah, we can transcend the harshness. What exactly are these remedies? These things that are laid out right before us. Individually, I believe each is a guide to realigning our most vital relationships, and that taken together help recenter us as individuals and as an entire people dedicated to stewarding the health and wellness of the entire world. Teshuvah, return. More specifically, I believe a return to ourselves. Yes, we often hear teshuvah translated as repentance, but that's just another way of saying return to the things we know we have fallen short on in our lives. Teshuvah, I believe, is an act of returning to the essential goodness that we know exists within ourselves and recommitting for the year ahead to acting from that place in all things that we do. Teshuvah manifests itself when we care for ourselves in the ways we know are necessary, not just the bare minimum that the limited number of hours in the day sometimes afford us. Teshuvah means giving ourselves credit for the good that we have done and that we will continue to do. It means seeking help when we need it, to reinvigorate our physical and spiritual and mental health, seeking professionals, seeking those who can help, without returning to ourselves first and foremost in the new year. How can any of us begin to think of our responsibilities towards others? Tefillah, prayer, a return to God, however each of us may know God. As I've said many times before, prayer is often misunderstood as what we wish to receive from God or to thank God for giving to us. But in reality, it's no simple action. Tefillah, prayer, is reflexive. It causes us to turn inward, to find the words we speak outwardly. It is not a wish list of what we want or need, but a promise to God of what we will work towards on God's behalf. Peace, kindness, fairness, and of course safety. And tzedakah, righteousness, a return to others. For what is the point of realigning ourselves internally or for reestablishing our personal covenant with God if we are not then to turn around and spread the fruits of that covenant, the fruits of that realignment to others who are in need? Tzedakah is not charity. It is righteousness. It is fairness. It is in working towards an equalization of the goodness and the mercy of God and the benefits that all people are entitled to in this world. It is a sacred duty, tzedakah, nearly unparalleled in our tradition. It is not just money. It is time, it's energy, it is love. And we recommit to it on Rosh Hashanah for the year to come. Teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah, this is our task, and these are our remedies. In taking on the yoke of our tradition, we participate in the timeless reconception of the world, as Rabbi Bowman spoke of. And we remember, as my favorite poet Rilke wrote, on this day, the hour is striking so close above me, so clear and sharp, that all of my senses ring with it. I can feel it now. There is a power within me to grasp and to give shape to my world. I know that nothing has ever been real without my beholding it. All things that become with my help. I look towards them and I ripen them, and then they come towards me to meet and to be met. Shana Tova.